All good. Привіт, привіт, привіт. Welcome once again to Ukrainian Voice of the Rockies. Мене звати Mark Dillon, and I am very happy to be with you once again today. Today is December 9th, 2025. So this podcast is looking back at the year now coming to a close, and of course, we're looking forward too. Ideally, we'd be doing this all the time, but life is complicated and busy, and it's easy to lose sight of what's really important. Today, to help us think about the past and future, are two great members of our larger community in Denver, and two of my favorite Coloradans. Roz Duman is this year's recipient of Historic Denver's Molly Brown Award, named after one of Denver's most famous historical figures. A lifelong advocate for civil rights and humanitarian causes, Roz has spent her career uplifting others and standing up for what's right. From her early work with Congresswoman Pat Schroeder and Mayor Wellington Webb, to her leadership of the Coalition Against Global Genocide, she has continually found ways to turn conviction into meaningful change. In the days following Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Roz was among the first Coloradans to reach out to the Ukrainian community to offer support. We are also honored today to have with us Pius Kamau, I should say Dr. Kamau, a retired general surgeon, president of the Aurora-based Africa-America Higher Education Partnerships, co-founder of the Africa Enterprise Group, and an activist for minority students in STEM education. He is a national public radio commentator, a Huffington Post blogger, a columnist for Denver Gazette, and is featured on the podcast Never Again. I should say that Pius kindly hosted me last summer on that podcast for a discussion about Ukraine, and so today I am especially pleased to return the favor and broaden the focus. I also want to mention that Pius has a memoir coming out next year entitled Running with Lions. So we're looking forward to reading that, Pius, as we follow our discussion today about Ukraine and more broadly the Ukrainian community and the communities here in Denver and Colorado. Now, I want to set the scene a little bit for what we're about to discuss with a short glimpse into history. I'm going back 34 years. It's 1991, and the Soviet Union is falling apart. Gorbachev is still technically the head of the USSR, but things are not looking very good for the future of the USSR. And what has happened is that Boris Yeltsin has come on the scene, of course, and in the various former Soviet republics, there are leaders who are saying, we're nations too, and we demand our own self-determination. And essentially, against that backdrop, the President of the United States in August of 1991 visits Kyiv. George Herbert Walker Bush comes and he addresses the parliament in Kyiv, and he gives a speech which basically tells Ukrainians, take it easy, take it slow. We're not, the United States, all that much in favor of you moving quickly on this independence idea. That speech comes to be known as the Chicken Kyiv speech because it seemed like the United States was chickening out of what it was going to do. But the point comes a few weeks later. First of all, the parliament in Kyiv takes a vote and declares independence, August 24th. This is Ukraine's Independence Day. And then something else happens. Ukrainian Americans from across the country start telling Washington, through their elected representatives, we really want to see the United States recognize the independence of Ukraine. And in fact, there was a senator from Colorado named Hank Brown, a Republican. In August, he sends, or maybe it's September, he sends a letter to the White House, says, you know, we really ought to recognize the independence of Ukraine. People are talking about it. He never gets an answer. A month passes. It's November, and it's an off year, but there's one election going on in Pennsylvania for senator. Republican is well known. His name is Dick Thornburgh. He's well known, former attorney general. He gets defeated. Why? Because Ukrainian Americans, who are fairly numerous in Pennsylvania, Poles, other East European ethnic groups, say, this go slow stuff is not what we're interested in. We're interested in seeing the United States do what it said it always wanted. It said forever and ever that it wanted to recognize these countries as independent states. And now we're reflecting our displeasure in the vote that we cast. So after that November election, 3 or 4 weeks pass, and then the White House gathers a group of Ukrainian Americans. This will come as a shock to some Ukrainian Americans today because that sort of thing is not happening. The Ukrainian American groups go, they meet with President Bush, the first Bush, the older Bush, and he says, you know, I'm listening now. We're going to recognize the independence of Ukraine. So on the very day that the Soviet Union officially collapses, Christmas Day, 1991, the United States recognizes the independence of Ukraine. And the reason that's interesting to us today is that Ukrainian Americans don't have that kind of access. And maybe it's a function of the way politics has changed. Maybe it's the result of mistakes we've made. Maybe there's something we should be doing. And that's where I want to enter our conversation today. Are there things your experience here in Colorado suggests to us, things that we should be doing to be more effective as advocates? Now, granted, this has been a crazy, disturbing, terrible year, this 2025, because it started with President Trump saying, I'm going to solve this problem in one day, and then the next month he's berating the president of Ukraine in the Oval Office, and then things kind of went downhill from there. It would be ridiculous if it weren't so serious. So we definitely have different circumstances this year, but both of you, Pius, Roz, you have great experience here in Colorado organizing people and helping your communities be successful. So I want to hear what you have to say on this topic.
Yeah, I would like to sort of go back to something you mentioned, which is in 1991, the Ukrainians in general in the United States gathered together and formed one powerful group.
Right.
You have to, in life, you have to do things that you have done before and have worked.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to always remember that. It's also important to remember that even though the politics has changed in America, we're in a very different sort of political universe today. Where you have the so-called "Make America Great Again."
Mm-hmm.
That may have changed, but Ukrainians have not changed. They continue to have the same push, the same wanting to be a free people from the old Soviet Union,
Yes.
the current Russia. So that they have not changed from that point of view. And they really need to sort of take the things they have found work for them to go through this. It's almost like going through a cloud. To me, the MAGA movement is a cloud. It's a cloud in the atmosphere. You have to go through and find your way and your direction through it to go to where you want to be.
Right.
So the point I'm trying to make is, I think the Ukrainians in general have to get together, work together, and unify and use their own strength.
Right.
And do what they did in 1991.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Right.
It does.
And I'd like to add to that what you're saying, piggyback. This is why our organization, the Coalition Against Global Genocide, was started. Because, well, I created this organization because of the Holocaust. Because at that time, nobody knew, not everybody knew, not enough people knew what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, we lost many, many people within the Jewish community as well as many people in other communities. And I became aware of this because of my father was a rabbi. He passed away many years ago, but I was a little girl. And some of the people coming out of Europe came to the house to meet with my dad. They couldn't speak, these survivors, but as a little kid, I was able to pick up things. And as I grew older, survivors coming out of the Holocaust out of the camps, became my friends. And the common denominator was that there was nobody there. Nobody was helping them. They were either not helping them. There were reasons why. But what happened to me later in years was that I realized that never again became yet again. I mean, the Holocaust, that's what we had hoped, that this would never happen again, but it happened before with the Armenian community,
Right.
genocide in Armenia, and it keeps going on. It's yet again. And so I felt the strong desire to start an organization that would make people aware of what's happening in the world, as well as in our own United States. And so that's the first thing, make people aware. And once they're aware, take action to try to stop what's happening. And that's hard to do once a genocide starts, but it was creating a groundswell of strength of people coming together to push for what they wanted. Just what you said. They did this going to the White House, and now here we are today. And that's what we're needing to do again. Get this groundswell of strength to push what you want.
And the other thing which I see is really needed is not necessarily going to the White House, because the White House that we have today may not listen to you. But we have something even stronger than the White House. It is the people. The people of the United States need to be mobilized, need to be mobilized towards realizing and appreciating and seeing that the Ukrainians want to be free, and they need to be free. The American people are very powerful, and they're powerful because each one of them has a vote.
Right.
And you have to go to where the vote is. And that's important.
You know, it's when we think about the question of genocide in the 20th century and now in the 21st century, and we know that there are, we have this body of knowledge about what has happened, not just in 1915 to the Armenians, but in the 30s and 40s to the Jews in Europe, and to the Rohingya in Sudan. So we have these instances of genocide, and the Ukrainians would say, look what happened to us under Stalin, because they had in 1932, 33, millions, at least 3 million, who died as a result of forced starvation, because Stalin came in, he wanted to collectivize agriculture, but not only that, he wanted to steal the food that was in Ukraine and give it to Russian cities so that the Ukrainians would be more subservient and would obey whatever Moscow wanted. And now, as we look at what is going on with the Russian occupation of parts of Ukraine, they have taken at least 20,000 children from areas that they have, and they've spread them out throughout camps, indoctrination, re-education camps, and this is cultural genocide, where you're killing someone's culture.
I think what has happened, unfortunately, is the American view has changed somewhat, whereas the Russian point of view, in terms of who the Russian Empire was, what the Soviet Union was, where Russia wants to go, has really not changed. In that, the Putin way of thinking is that they want to recreate the empire which they had before.
Absolutely.
And the Americans don't somehow see that, or they have changed. So in other words, we had this. The Cold War was between two opposing ideologies, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And we forgot that ideology does not seem to have changed,
Right.
from their point of view, except for the American point of view. I mean, the American sees history in a different lens. It would seem to me, whereas Putin sees the world in the same lens that he saw Russia and the world, from the Soviet days.
Even pre-Soviet,
Exactly.
like when we're looking at this title, those of you listening to the podcast but not viewing it will not see this book, The Last Empire, which is by a Ukrainian historian named Serhiy Plokhy. And this is the choice of title, The Last Empire, is very relevant, because what Putin is trying to do is to recreate an empire.
Exactly.
That's right.
We had, you'll remember Zbigniew Brzezinski,
Right.
and he said something once that, this is about 30 or so years ago, after the Soviet Union had collapsed, he said, if Moscow regains control over Ukraine with its 50 million people and major resources, as well as access to the Black Sea, Russia automatically again regains the wherewithal to become a powerful imperial state spanning Europe and Asia. But Russia without Ukraine is essentially an Asiatic power.
Yeah.
And that's what Putin wants to. Right now, he's working as essentially a vassal of Xi,
China,
of
right.
China.
Absolutely.
But he wants to regain Ukraine so that he can be a new emperor of the Russian Empire.
I think we have to remember that. And unfortunately, I think the occupants of the White House don't quite see it that way.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really sort of see it through this fog of the MAGA fog, which
Yeah.
just kind has sort of dropped over America in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the so-called America First idea sort of preclude the fact that there's an empire being rebuilt again across the Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow our vision is not clear enough to see that, and I think the Ukrainians here in America, indeed, need to keep reminding Americans of that fact and the fact of what happened during the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is important, I think, that we, that concept be reawakened and be restated, I think.
And that's why education is so very, very important
Exactly.
for the coalition. That's one of our main
Right.
pieces. We talk, we're in schools, we've done conferences, we've done so many different things, but the other aspect of this is, yes, I mean, I can talk from the Jewish community, being part of the Jewish community, but I'll tell you what I've been told once. One non-Jewish voice talking about an issue that's important to you is like 10 Jewish voices. In other words, maybe I got it wrong. It's very important to have other people speaking on behalf of what is necessary, what we
Right.
want, what the Ukrainians need. And that's one of the things that we do. We have our organization, it has many people from many different communities, educating people that don't understand what is it you're fighting for.
Yeah.
And you just, gave the whole picture, and so many people need to have that picture and understand it and join forces with you. And maybe not go to the White House, as you're saying, but at least start here on a local level with
Right.
our congressional folks.
Right.
And
Right.
getting the issue, making sure they understand, and that they're not just talking to Ukrainian people, they're talking to many people who feel very strongly about this.
But we were also talking about making common cause so that when there are issues, let's say, last week, the occupant of the White House referred to Somalis as garbage.
Yes.
That's an opportunity not just for Somalis to react, it's an opportunity
Everybody.
for Jews, for Ukrainians, for everyone to react and say, this is not acceptable.
I think any human being, any rational human being who thinks of another human being as garbage, they have gone beyond. They're gone beyond reason. And when I call Roz, you're a Jew, and I call her bad Jewish name, I'm calling not only her that, but all the other human beings that are around her. And that's why our thinking has to be more clear. That when the President of the United States calls a group of human beings garbage, he really has gone beyond the pale, so to speak.
Yeah,
You're calling humanity garbage.
right.
And he's calling Ukrainians garbage in many ways, because Ukrainians and the Somalis are no different. I mean, they are citizens of the United States. They are occupants of this wonderful country of ours. So he's calling Native Americans garbage. He's calling Ukrainians garbage. He's calling all the people who vote, and many of them who had voted for him, garbage.
Right.
And this is how Ukrainians have to begin looking at it, to somehow take Somalis along with them
Right.
in this struggle against Russia.
Right. Because so it's right and it's smart. We're trying to come up with strategies that are smart, but that also reflect principles. So in Colorado, we have maybe 30,000 persons who consider themselves Ukrainian Americans or Ukrainians because we have refugees here right now. And their situation deserves also specific concern. But when you think about that number against the entire population of Colorado, you realize, oh, well, we can't do this on our own. We have to appeal to others. So we can be smart about it by not just confining our circumstances and looking inward, but also understanding how our circumstances are similar to the circumstances of other people.
Absolutely.
And then working with them on matters of their concern and asking them to help us on matters of our own concern. And that will be more powerful. Early this year, as part of the great confusion and frustration and anger and upset over what was going on in Washington, D.C., and the Zelensky visit and so on, we had a rally at the state capitol here in Denver. And we estimate that 6,000 people showed up. Well, when some of my friends looked around, they said, oh, there are so many Americans here. Which I thought was funny, because they're Americans, of course, but they were thinking through the lens like, well, this is about a Ukraine issue, and there are Americans here standing up for us. And that is, back to your point, Russ, when one person from outside of your community says, I recognize, I understand, and I support you, that is almost, to use that word that sometimes gets overused, that's solidarity, that is helping people.
So a very practical thing, really, from an individual point of view, is if you took the 30,000 Ukrainians and they went out, and if each one of them got to know 5 non-Ukrainians, if you brought 5 people to your camp, to your thinking, to your supporting you, that is 5 multiplied by 30. That's 150,000 people. And there's so much power in that.
Right.
There's so much power in expressing your pain, expressing your hurt to people who care. And that's all you have to do.
Right.
You have to begin reaching out to people who will listen to you.
Correct.
And that's why I look at the Jewish community, which has been harping and talking about the Holocaust, for the last 60, 70 years.
Right.
Yeah, almost 80 now.
And
80 years. 80 years.
80 years.
And at this moment, the Holocaust is really is implanted in our minds, in our psyches.
Yeah.
As much as we try to forget it, but it's there. The concept of the Holocaust will not leave us, even though we continue to kill other people, but the Holocaust is always there. And that's what I think Ukrainians have to sort of begin doing. Take the lessons of history and replicate them as well as you can.
Right.
I think it's important to do that. So anyway, in practical terms, let's go ahead and have more demonstrations. have more demonstrations, have instead of 6,000, have 10,000, have 30,000 people, marching for Ukraine. But do march for more than Ukraine, though.
Yes,
March for the Somalis, too.
that's my point.
That's right. And each community has had something happen to them. When I think of years ago when the virus started, and the president was blaming the Chinese and called it Chinese flu, and you had the entire Asian communities, all the communities, hysterical. They were afraid. They were afraid
Sure.
that they were going to be hurt, killed, and
That there were,
it's very unfortunate that we have a leader who has enabled people to express what they feel
yeah,
more
yeah.
without fear of anything. It was inside more, but now the racism, the bigotry, the anti-Semitism, you name it, is out there. And the only way I see is we all have something,
Yeah.
we all have something in common. And we need to come together to do what we need to do.
When you see the way that Minnesotans reacted
Yep.
after that comment, it wasn't just one group of Minnesotans, it was pretty broad, I think.
The whole state.
And then when that gets registered, other people say, you know what? They're right. And so that's indeed
That's
what
that
we have to
ground
do.
support. That's that
Exactly.
support.
Exactly.
It's very, Washington is very important. It's very important. That's our
Yeah.
place. But more importantly, as far as having worked in a congressional office,
Yeah.
it's the grassroots level. It's the everyday people pushing or staying in touch with their congressmen and senators. Because if they don't listen to their constituents, what their desires are, they're going to lose they're going to lose the next election.
Yeah.
And so,
I'd like to give you a small example, which I think I'm writing about this actually. In Aurora, the council in Aurora, I think is about 6 or 7 people, and this last election, one of the loudest, one of the most divisive person was elected, was voted out.
Right. This is the city council in Aurora.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, this person, Jurinsky, she began crying out, sending signals out there that Aurora was conquered and is being ruled by Venezuelans. Only because there was a picture of 4 or 5 gang members, sort of in a building, sort of maybe fighting each other, arguing with each other or whatever. But she took that and just really sort of spread it out to a point that the president of the future president of
At
United
that point, yep.
came to Colorado to save Colorado from Venezuelans. And it was a lie. It was a big, big lie. And we all sort of saw her and realized what a horrible person this is. And she was voted out.
And then she was voted out of office.
Exactly.
that's
So
what I'm saying, yes.
the point I'm trying to make is you have to let the community know the bad that exists and the good that can also exist.
Right.
And trying to exploit and find a way to somehow promote the good.
We try to find, so Ukrainians of Colorado is part of a larger group called the American Coalition for Ukraine. And they meet in Washington twice a year with our elected representatives. And I think I told you this. We try to meet with everyone.
Yeah.
We have 8 congressional districts. We try to meet with everyone. There's one person who never says yes, and who in fact says, because there was this incident you may remember. We're having a podcast, so we have to mention names, but there was, remember last year, before the election, when there was finally a vote on aid to Ukraine. The congresswoman from the 1st District, Diana DeGette, went out. There were little Ukraine flags, and people were waving these flags on the House floor of the House of Representatives in Washington. And the gentle lady, at that point, from the 3rd District, now the 4th District, that gentle lady said, what the hell are you doing this for? You should be ashamed of yourselves for giving any aid to faraway Ukraine. And so that's really the contrast. We have, and I want to say this can be a bipartisan or a nonpartisan, because there is one new member of Congress who is a Republican from the 8th District, Mr. Evans, who did co-sponsor the sanctions legislation. So we went forward and said, thank you very much, sir, for doing that. So, but it does illustrate that in our own state we have people who are, not exemplars of what we would like to see as far as support for humanity, not just Ukraine, humanity. And then we have people who are really outstanding.
And I would think they're the majority.
I would think they're the majority.
Yes,
too.
and I just came up with an idea, if I'm allowed, if I may.
Please.
It just hit me. I don't know why just, but, well, first of all, I want to let you know that we created several, when we first started, a group, they're staff members of all of our congressional delegation. We were meeting with them 4 times a year.
Right.
And we brought different issues at different times to them, and it was more of a dialogue because we wanted to know, are you hearing from your constituents? Because if you're not on a specific issue, I mean, it depended on Armenians or whatever was happening, if you're not hearing from your constituents, we're not doing our job. And we kind of let that go a little bit, although we have the names of our local staff people that we could reach out to very quickly. We just updated that. And we do want to bring this back where we were
That's a
meeting.
great idea,
But
Roz.
from there,
Great idea.
it just hit me. All these people, the issue is the situation that has to happen is that you get them educated. Now, rallies, demonstrations, of course it does that. That's one aspect. There has to be different things happening. And I'm just thinking that all of these congressional people, well, first of all, we would like to put this together again and have this issue of Ukraine come to be the issue.
Thank you.
And that's number one. But one of the asks would be, you do town meetings. You bring so many of your constituents together for town meetings, and perhaps it would be a good idea if we could have the floor to talk about Ukraine and just how you began this broadcast.
Brilliant.
Now, it's not only congressional. There is no reason, United States Congress, there's no reason why we can't go to the next level, maybe, I don't want to use the word down, but our state level. State level, to talk to all of these state representatives. They all do these town meetings.
Yes.
And you have it doesn't have to just be Ukrainians pushing this issue.
Right.
That's what's the first issue. Make sure you have other people pushing so that they will agree on the state level to have the issue of Ukraine be brought up at their town meeting for
Right.
education.
Yeah.
We found a year ago, that a state senator from Colorado Springs, a Republican, was a big champion for Ukraine. And he spoke up on the floor of the state senate here. So that's absolutely necessary to do it at the state level as well as at the national elected level.
Well, I think it has to begin. Like she's saying, it has to begin in your neighbors, the people you have to have a groundswell from the ground, so to speak. But also, I think maybe the council members, for example.
City councils?
Yes, city council members. I think because they're more accessible, you know.
Every level then.
Yeah, and they are the people who are talking to the to the state councillors, etc. And then the
True.
state, I mean, you're talking to the congressional legislators. But I mean, so in other words, I mean, you have to seed the soil, so that if you expect anything to grow, you have to take that kind of method.
Right.
It's imperative. It's imperative, I think, that people don't sit back and expect things to happen, because things don't happen if you don't make them happen. Number one. Number two, silence does not buy you any results at all. In America, it doesn't. Maybe from an intellectual point of view, it does. If you sit down and read a book and write books, etc., maybe that works. But it does not work for moving nations and stopping wars. That happens by taking a gun and going out and fighting, and raising your voice, playing a bugle. I mean, that's what changes things. Well, now one more thing, since I'm thinking about this, is that we need to get other groups have the same, that have been terrorized, that have been hurt and damaged by Russia. And by that I mean the Syrians, whose nation is now in ruins. If you look at a map of like the pictures of cities across Syria,
Aleppo.
yeah, they've all been destroyed by bombs thrown from Russian airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Chechnya, the same thing too. You look at Georgia, the same thing too. These are the people that will be listening to Ukraine,
Yes.
because they have seen it happen in their own communities. And why not Sudan and Sudanese? I mean, who have been treated horribly by whoever. They'll be allies, I think, also. So in other words, choose all these people who have been hurt, people who have
Right.
a history, and let them be a part of your coalition.
Definitely. These are all great ideas. And I really hope that we can continue talking about them. I want to convey to those listening and watching that this is just the beginning. We have to build these bridges in the new year.
Absolutely.
We have to reach out within our own communities, but between our communities, so that more can be accomplished that benefits everyone. So
I could tell you, and that Ukrainians of Colorado are one of our partners. We have over 40 organizations, members of our organization. We're right here.
good.
To be able to help develop some of these ideas. I mean, I really want to see our congressional delegation, staff members coming together, and also state level. And there are ways. I mean, I could name a lot of things that
Right.
possibility to do, but we could do that, work on a proposal, and because that, I'd like to know where all of the Ukrainians are living. You start with that group.
Right.
Because representatives will react towards their constituents faster.
Mm-hmm.
And where are they? But then you bring in all these other, I mean, we've been doing this for years. The African-American community, when churches were being burned, we were all together to
Right.
protest this happening. This is the strength. This is the strength of America, as we see it.
Yeah. And that's a very good point there, which is there's no community that is less than another, because all communities are really, we are in this together. We are part of this nation. And sometimes, for example, we may think, well, The Hispanics, I mean, don't really count, do they? Because they are very quiet, they don't talk. The blacks, I mean, they just make noise, but they don't count, you know.
No, no.
It's like, we're not going to go to talk to them and ask for their support. But that's wrong. The Native American is important. I think talking to the Native Americans so that they can make noise for you.
Yes.
Give somebody a bell so they can ring the bell at the street corner. And the ringing of the bell makes no difference what color you are. You have the strength to raise your arm and ring that bell. That's what you want. That's, and so if I may say one more thing.
Please.
What happens to a lot of Europeans, especially Eastern Europeans, when they come to this country, they tend to kind of isolate themselves, from the rest of of America.
Sometimes there's a fearfulness.
Well, whatever the reason is, but you have to go out.
Right.
You have to open your heart, you have to open your eyes, and you have to open your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to the people who have been in this country for 100 years, for 400 years. You have to talk to those people.
Yes.
Because those are the people who know where the bodies are buried, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my advice too. The one thing that the Ukrainian community can do for itself is to incorporate and to bring others to their
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, let's close on that point because, and one thing I will mention is that there's been some interesting polling data in the last several months across the United States, Gallup, Harvard, etc. And the numbers are very large in favor of Ukraine, supporting Ukraine.
Yes.
It's like 71, 72, 73% of Americans polled say, we agree, Ukraine should be supported. So part of it already reflects the fact that Americans of all walks have said, yeah, we kind of understand. We understand what's going on here. We understand that these people need support. And now it's up to the Ukrainian community and those who support it to reciprocate and to say, okay, now we are grateful for your support and we want to stay connected with you and your issues.
That's the important thing. The understanding their issue, everyone else's issues. I started a project for the Jewish community called the Outreach Committee. We met with our small group of our people, met with a small group of people from every month we were meeting with a different community. These are our issues, because obviously there are other, what are your issues? So that we understand them, and we will fight for you or with you in the legislature if you're trying to get something passed. And that's what's been going on for a long time now, even though our outreach committee is not an outreach committee now, but we're still the whole process of working together and making sure we're together. That's the whole thing. That's coming together and fighting for each of our issues. We're one. We're one humanity.
Yeah, and so once again, going back again, because things always go back to where you began. The 1991 coalition should be recreated to a 2026 coalition, which also includes Poles,
Yes.
people from Poland, people in the Baltic states.
The Baltic states.
Need to be the Swedes. I mean, who are very, very concerned.
The Finns.
The Finns, exactly. Those people need to be in the coalition. So Ukrainians do not think about themselves alone. They should think of themselves as this block of people in that whole area. And that's how they should look at themselves.
Yeah, it's not just the American communities, our neighbors here, is outreaching to others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
And storytelling.
yes. Yes.
That
Yes.
you open somebody's heart, through your the demonstrations, the marches, whatever we do in that, like Martin Luther King's parade is coming up. You open one person's heart, they're going to start, their eyes open. They're going to, oh, I need to know more about this.
Mm-hmm.
Once the heart is open,
Yep.
and then they start reading, and they want more and more, and that's how that education piece moves forward.
You see, I'm an educated person. Personally, but tell the truth. I mean, I cannot think of one or two Ukrainian writers, and I think this is something that we need to begin letting people know. I mean, talk to the Colorado Public different radio stations, and begin talking about literature,
Yes.
talking about poets, talking about all the wonderful things that the Ukrainians have done, over the last 1,000 years. So then the knowledge of culture, I think, is very, very important also. So those are things that you may even begin reciting poetry, Ukrainian poetry on your podcast.
Well, funny you should mention that. Just a second.
Uh-huh.
I have for each of you
Oh,
a book.
wow, thank you.
Well, this is very good. Thank you.
Oh, this is Baba Yar.
So these are.
Babiar
So this
Yevtushenko.
is published by Harvard University Press, and these are Ukrainian poets going back dozens, decades and decades.
Uh-huh.
Those who witnessed, but also who wrote in the ensuing decades. So this is a kind of a testament of Ukrainians, including Ukrainians of Jewish heritage,
Mhm.
writing about that disaster.
Do you have, and then we've talked about, what I'm coming up with, Yevtushenko in here, I don't know. The reason I bring that up, my father went to Russia with 4 other rabbis to see what was happening to the Jews of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And after, Hitler was killing them physically, Stalin culturally.
Yes.
And my father wrote to this poet because he wrote about, things that were happening at Babi Yar, the horrible situation at Babi Yar.
You're thinking of Yevtushenko, right?
Yevtushenko,
Yevtushenko,
yes, yes.
He was very.
My
He
father's-
became
and
very
my
famous
father-
for that particular
But,
poem.
and my
Poem,
father
right.
wrote poetry,
Mm.
and one of his poems is about him.
Mm.
I was going to bring it. I need to show that to you. How
Yeah.
he responded to him
Wow.
about his heart, his soul coming through that he felt how wrong this was, what was going on. It's so much to talk about.
It's interesting.
Thank you for
it's,
the book.
Yeah, it's interesting that we get known also by our artists.
Yes.
Our musicians, our poets, our painters, and our writers. So that's something the Ukrainian community can do to sort of disseminate.
We're going to do more of that.
Yeah, to the greater Denver, the greater Colorado community, because that's important. Through our schools I think need to know more about it. Our universities need to know about it, and that's how we become a more complete and a more better community society, by knowing about each other.
Well, I can't think of a better way to conclude this conversation. Pius, Roz, thank you so much for your time, for coming here to give us your insights and your wisdom. And we'll be in touch.
I have enjoyed it. I'm sure she has too.
Thank you again.
Thank you for having us. And I know we're throwing so many ideas to you. I've got another one. We could do that off that we're looking at doing.
Can you do it quick? Just say it quickly.
Quickly?
Quickly.
Culturally, I had a Sudanese woman
Mm.
who survived Darfur, who said, I'd like to bring our culture, our food, our music, before we were devastated, to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
And we never did that. And I'm thinking, what a wonderful idea to have a series of different countries be represented have an evening to show what their country was like before the devastation of whatever, genocide, crimes against humanity. There's so many ideas and so many ways to educate people. It doesn't have to be in a classroom.
You're right.
And it has to be in all areas. And I know this sounds a little overwhelming, because if people were throwing all these ideas to me, it's like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do all this? One little piece at a time.
Well, maybe others listening
Yes.
are watching this conversation will come forward and help us
Yes.
realize these good ideas.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.